All right, so welcome. We're virtual today, but we're here nonetheless, and we're doing our Friday, I would say, vicarious White House uh, thing from
So
our
tell me
Zoom.
why we are not in the White House this evening. One, I think President is traveling. Two, it's raining.
That's correct. The wheels have come down. He's traveled to Egypt for the climate summit for the G70, and there's a lot to talk about there because right now the UN says that we're on dire straits for climate change. The goal had been for climate overall in the world to rise by 1.5 degrees centigrade maximum, and we've blown through that. There's no way that we're going to be able to keep that. The trouble is that with climate change, it's going to direly affect countries, especially low-lying countries all over the world, Pacific Islands, and of course snowmelt. It's going to raise sea levels. We've seen increasing hurricanes in Florida. We've seen wildfires in California. It's costing us trillions of dollars. The one thing we haven't seen yet is a direct war due to climate change, but that's next, I believe. And I think many of the participants believe that's true too. Because putting people under such stress, and of course, what's happening in Pakistan, the dire flooding, where, I mean, you just got 30% of the country underwater.
And that's what experts and political analysts have been saying. If we don't address this major challenge which the humanity is facing in the name of climate change, there might be circumstances where countries will be fighting among each other on water, on riverbeds, on rise of the seabed, right? All these things could be happening. There will be some countries where the climate will be changing. There's some countries there will be where there is scarcity of food. So these are the real challenges which the world leaders are currently negotiating and talking about in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt. So walk us through, what do you expect from that meeting, from the summit?
Two things. One is that there are people that believe in climate change, but then there are many people that look at fighting climate change as an inconvenience. There are many countries, especially less developed countries, that say to the United States, "Hey, look, you guys in the United States, you caused this problem, and now you're asking us to pay to fix this." And they have a point, and the fact is that we don't have a good solution to that yet, to that dilemma as to what to do. And of course, we have client denialism in this country, as you know. So there's going to be a lot of diplomatese. There's going to be a lot of talking, but who knows what's going to happen? I know that John Kerry is very interested in getting something done. He's been very committed on this issue, but it's going to take bipartisan effort to get this done. Who knows what's going to happen?
I wanted to ask you one thing. I was curious. Last night, when President was boarding Air Force One, and before that, the Marine One from the South Lawns of the White House, he appeared to be very cheerful, very happy, very satisfied.
Oh yes, he is.
Do you know what the secret for that? Why he was happy?
Yes. The Democrats were predicting a GOP blowout, which is what usually happens in midterms. Usually the party that is in power in the White House loses at least 30 seats in the House on average. And usually the Senate goes to the opposing party. That may not happen. We do not know yet, but that may not happen. It may not happen in the Senate. And weirdly enough, right now, if in Nevada, the Democratic senator from Nevada and Mark Kelly from Arizona, and if Raphael Warnock wins the runoff election, that would be the first time in American history, I believe, that the majority in the Senate, if the president is in power, had not lost a single seat. That would be pretty crazy.
That's quite impressive performance from President Biden.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us why Democratic Party and President Biden performed much better than was expected, and what happened to the red wave?
Well, it wasn't a red wave, was it? It was like a pebble in a pond. But I once heard a pollster tell me that polls don't predict the future. They only can talk about a moment in time of what has happened. And nowadays, polling is so fraught with problems, whether people don't answer truthfully. But another thing is that polls are based on phone calls often. And people, maybe you see it with your own kids, and I see it with my kids, they don't talk on the phone. Younger people don't get on the phone and talk. So that whole Gen Z crowd that people, would usually pick up the phone and talk, nobody talks. They text, they do other things. So polls don't work anymore. And so there was a large percentage of people, younger people, that went out and voted, and you just didn't see them in the polls.
I wanted to congratulate you for this. Even the last week, if our viewers look at the podcast of last week, you said the same thing, that don't go by the polls. They could be around. And you rightly predicted so. And congratulations for that. And this time you have rightly mentioned about the younger generation. The latest research that has come out after the polls yesterday, that the large number of younger generation, 18 to 29 age group, have went out to vote. This is the second highest in 20 years. And majority of them, large segment of them have voted for the Democratic Party. 65%. And some in the battleground states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, they have gone as high as 72%. Can you tell us the reason to our viewers why the younger generation, Gen Z that you said, are attracted towards the Democratic Party?
Well, I actually think that it's very simple, and that is that in the end, politics is about the possible, about what you can get done, and any solution, no matter what it is going to be fraught with problems, no matter what that problem is. And right now, in general, we're seeing a trend where the Democrats are at least being perceived with trying to address inflation. They're trying to address climate change. They're trying to address healthcare with the ACA, et cetera, infrastructure. I mean, Biden has a very good record to run on lately. And the opposition party, which is, it's not just a Republican thing. It's what opposition parties do in this country. They're complaining about inflation. They're complaining about things, but you haven't seen policy proposals. This is what we will do going forward. And I think people are they have their spidey senses up. They know when they're being fed something that isn't quite true in general. And so I think a lot of people are saying, okay, you're complaining, but give me an answer. What are you going to do? And I think that I'm always wary of politicians that attack only, but don't give you a reason why to vote for them. And I do think that Democrats in general, not always, but in general, have been more policy directed, and I think that's made a difference.
That's great. What message this elections sends to the rest of the world? And number two, what impact this midterm election would have on the next 2 years of the Biden presidency?
Well, President Biden, fortunately, has embraced bipartisanship. He has not tried to vilify Republican Party. That is key. That is important. That is key to our democracy, that we value both parties, both contributing back and forth. And so, and President Biden has not been a pugilist trying to just fight, but he has really tried. Even when he's failed, he's just continued to try to work with the other side. I think in general that in any kind of democratic or parliamentary system, the more moderate politician, whether they're right or left, if they're right down the middle, they're the ones that are going to succeed. And I think that Biden has proven that that is the way forward. He has put aside much of his of the left flank of his party and really continue to push forward on what he needs to get done. I think that the message bodes well for the world, that this election proceeded as planned, that there were just many election deniers that failed in their bid. And I think if you took two states that really have very similar demographics, and they're right next to each other, and that would be New York and Pennsylvania. And you saw in New York where Republicans, if they weren't tied to the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, actually did pretty well in the House seat. They actually gained seats in the House. Now, part of that, too, was the failed attempt by Andrew Cuomo to gerrymander the district. But it was also true that the Republicans within New York generally put on a solid campaign. However, in Pennsylvania, what we saw is many candidates, like Doug Mastriano, for instance, latched on to Donald Trump's election denialism, MAGA wing of the party, fight until you die kind of attitude. And they lost. They lost the Senate. They lost the governorship. And I think the message was very clear, and that is that Republicans, conservatives in this country, are not looking for a radical approach. They're looking for a conservative approach. And that's the message, I think. And I think it's put Donald Trump into a much more weakened position. And we saw that with the New York Post headline this week, where Murdoch owned New York Post, no less. Trumpty Dumpty had a great fall. Because what it shows right there is that there's a conflict. It's more between the MAGA wing and the establishment wing of the Republican Party than I would say it's between the Republicans and the Democrats.
So to sum up, you have said, if I heard it properly, accurately, post-midterm, President Trump has emerged a weaker leader. President Biden has emerged much stronger leader. Republican Party has emerged a little bit divided. Democratic Party has emerged more united. Right?
Yes, I think that's true. I think that's true. I think that if you're election watcher or if you're a politician, you always have to be humble and realize that the next problem is right around the corner. You can't just rest on your laurels. You got to go forward. There's so many problems to solve, and so we have to, keep our feet to the grindstone.
We have very few minutes now left on this show. We have a Veterans Day, right? The war is going on in Ukraine. What are your comments about that? What's the message on this day?
Well, I think General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, gave the most important comment over the last few days, where he harkened back to the Great War, which is what Veterans Day is named after. Of course, it's the armistice ended on the 11th hour of the 11th day on the 11th month in 1918. What General Milley said was that during that war, that two sides fought each other endlessly and never negotiated, and 20 million people died in that war. And he said in Ukraine, he didn't see a solution that does not include some sort of negotiated settlement here. Otherwise, people are just going to kill each other. And I think that's a very important point. I mean, obviously, Ukraine feels damaged. They feel they have lost many, many innocent lives. They've been invaded. It's easy. It's in fact expected that they would want to say, look, you, Russia, who caused this, you need to pay reparations. You need to pay up for what you did. But we look back at World War I, where the Allied countries said that to Germany after they fought the war, and they said, you must pay reparations. And that didn't end too well, did it? Because just a few years later, of course, it led to a far-right nationalist party in Germany in World War II. So somehow we have to find a way to look forward. And I don't know what that way is yet, but that's what Millie was saying. And I think it's very important. And now that's not all. I mean, there are people within different think tanks that think differently about this. Evelyn Farkas over at the McCain Institute in Arizona says, no, we should keep Russia's feet to the fire. We need to continue to press forward. So it's not just, we don't have just one answer here. We've got a debate going on as to what to do.
Great. We have run out of our time for this week, this Friday. We should tell our viewers, we'll come back again. I am Lalit Jha. I cover the White House for the world's largest democracy, and Doug, you represent the world's oldest and most powerful democracy in the world. This is a good combination, and we do a chit chat every Friday. Thanks for watching.
Thank you so much. It's enlightening and it's always delightful. Thank you.